cannot catch a break at this point. Now, we know the All-Star votes has been placed. A lot of people have been arguing about the players voting Caitlin Clark, the 11th.
It wasn't just outside the top 10 or even the top 5. She was ranked 11th among guards, according to the very players she shares the court with every single night. That ranking slipped even further this week, and before this video is over, it won't even be the most shocking thing that happened to Caitlin Clark over the last 7 days.
Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever is set to play another game tonight that is against the Phoenix Mercury. Last time we sent the Phoenix Mercury, Caitlin Clark was getting choked out on a damn basketball court, and they lost that game. Now, this game here...
What happened on that play wasn't just dramatic wording. It was exactly what many people saw. 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis, Phoenix forward Alyssa Thomas drove her fist into Clark's throat during a scramble for a loose ball, and the officials working the game didn't call anything in real time. Indiana's head coach called the play egregious and disrespectful before the ink was even dry on the box score. The league office apparently saw it the same way because it reviewed the play the following day, upgraded it to a flagrant 2, and suspended Thomas for 1 game, marking the first suspension of her 13-year career. Things turned ugly quickly after that. Thomas said she received death threats and racial slurs in the days that followed, which is a serious issue no matter which side of this rivalry you're on, and nobody should be receiving messages like that over a basketball play. Now, tonight, these two teams are back on the same court, this time in Phoenix, but Clark won't be out there.
Now, they did list the injury report for tonight's game, and as you guys can see here, Caitlin Clark will be out for rest. Sophie Cunningham is questionable with back spasms, and we got Aaliyah Boston is probable with a lower leg.
Officially, it's being listed as rest. Clark has been managing a back issue that flared up earlier this season, the same one that had her receiving treatment courtside back in the spring. A few of her teammates are also listed as questionable, including Aaliyah Boston, who is still dealing with a lower leg problem that dates back to the offseason. But that's not really the story tonight. Instead, the spotlight is on 2 very different women, one behind an ESPN desk and the other behind her own microphone, who looked at the exact same set of numbers this week and came away with completely opposite conclusions.
Playing the training staff, bro. We have to at this point. There's nothing in my mind that has me more convinced that the Indiana Fever literally has the worst training.
Whether or not you believe the training staff theory, Boston's situation has become a major subplot in Indianapolis. She suffered that lower leg injury while playing unrivaled over the winter, and months later, she's still managing it during the regular season. Fair or not, when a key piece of your roster can't fully recover from an injury that lingers that long, people naturally start asking questions about the people responsible for getting her back to full strength. That's a discussion for another day, though, because the bigger story this week didn't happen in a training room. It unfolded on national television, and it's the reason Clark's name was trending for reasons that had nothing to do with the way she actually played.
Important part of this, they didn't say that she was the 11th best guard in the WNBA. That's not what happened. As you mentioned, a lot of people didn't get ballots, a lot of people didn't vote, but what they did, they voted for the top 4 guards in the league. That was what the All-Star ballot was. So people were voting for top 4. I don't think that you can make a compelling argument that Caitlin Clark is a top 4 guard in the WNBA. Like, nobody can at this point. That is why she was 11. She got the 11th most votes.
That was ESPN senior commentator David Dennis Jr. explaining exactly how the voting process works. On the surface, he's not wrong about the mechanics. The All-Star selection is weighted 50% fans, 25% media, and 25% players. Guards weren't asked to rank Clark from first through however many spots. Instead, they filled out a ballot with room for 4 names, and enough players left her off their ballots that she finished 11th in that specific category. Fans ranked her second behind only Paige Buchers, while the media placed her third. She's still set to start the All-Star game in Chicago on July 25th regardless. Dennis is also correct that the ballot format played a role in producing that result. Only about 85 of the league's roughly 180 players even submitted a vote, and at least one team, the Sparks, reportedly never distributed ballots to its players. Indiana's own Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, both of whom earned starting spots anyway, also finished surprisingly low in that same player category, suggesting whatever is driving these results isn't limited to just one player or one team. There's a broader structural issue buried within these numbers that has nothing to do with who resents whom, and that part of his argument holds up. It was what he said immediately afterward that truly lit the fuse.
Bothers me is when this is framed as some sort of like petty jealousy or insecurity by these women in the WNBA, because that's not what I'm seeing with
Dennis's real disagreement isn't with the number itself. It's with the idea that the number reflects jealousy, and that's exactly the conclusion a Hall of Famer had already shared with the public less than a day earlier. Candace Parker, a three-time champion who was recently inducted into the Hall of Fame herself, went on record describing this voting pattern as a sign of insecurity among current players. So, looking at the very same story on different platforms, a WNBA legend and an ESPN analyst saw the identical ranking of 11 and reached completely opposite conclusions. One argued it was driven by jealousy, while the other said it's simply what happens to every highly hyped young player in every sport. By the end of this video, only one of those explanations is going to look like it was backed by the full picture.
Had the freeze out in the Olympics. They would not pass him the ball. LeBron James, when he got in the league and he was the chosen one, they were physical with LeBron James. When we're talking about Wemby right now, we're talking about a guy, the best way to attack him is with physicality and to beat him up. Candace Parker was in the middle of a riot in the middle of a WNBA game in her rookie year because they were attacking her because she was coming in as a prospective GOAT in the league. This happens. Angel Reese, by the way, is somebody who came in with Caitlin Clark, who has experienced flagrant twos, who Alyssa Thomas also basically chokeslammed and threw on the ground.
The comparisons Dennis leans on are the same ones that come up every time this debate surfaces. Michael Jordan supposedly being frozen out by veterans during the 1984 Olympics is one example. That story has been repeated for so many decades that it's become basketball folklore, even though people who were actually in that gym still disagree about how it truly unfolded. He also points to LeBron James taking hard hits as a teenager after entering the league as the chosen one, along with Candace Parker getting involved in an on-court brawl during her own rookie season, something that really happened and is still replayed today. That detail is especially interesting considering she's now the same person criticizing this year's voting. Angel Reese also endured plenty of similar treatment, and she has her own frustration with this year's voting after finishing 7th among front-court players and missing the starting lineup despite the attention she brings to the league. That fact alone complicates any theory that this is simply the league closing ranks against one specific player, because it clearly isn't happening only to Clark. Dennis then brings up Alyssa Thomas, placing what happened between her and Clark into the broader narrative of growing pains and physical play. That comparison feels especially unusual this week because the version of that story everyone is discussing isn't an old highlight of tough fouls. It's the incident from 2 weeks ago that resulted in a flagrant 2, a suspension, and an ugly wave of online responses that had nothing to do with basketball. Comparing that to Jordan not getting the ball during an Olympic scrimmage feels like a stretch. And it's worth considering why an ESPN analyst reached for a decades-old example instead of simply describing the latest incident the way the league's own disciplinary office officially did, calling it reckless.
So you're okaying this behavior, basically. Basically, he's okaying this behavior. My God, he need to be fired, bro.
That is the moment this story becomes the reaction people are most likely to remember. A direct accusation that Dennis is comfortable with what keeps happening to Clark was paired with calls for the network to reconsider who it puts on the air. Those were strong words, and plenty of viewers responded with their own frustration. One fan called the segment disgusting, as usual, and said nothing from that panel should be taken seriously anymore. Another stated plainly that if you don't believe Clark is a top 4 guard, then you're simply wrong. A third accused the network of chasing engagement in women's sports by promoting whichever opinion generates the most replies, whether it's reasonable or not. Dennis has faced criticism like this before, and this wasn't even the only complaint directed at ESPN's WNBA coverage this week. Other on-air personalities were also criticized for downplaying the Thomas incident and for describing Clark's popularity in terms of where she's from and what she looks like rather than how she plays. Whether you think those criticisms of the network are fair or exaggerated probably depends on which panel you already trust. Still, the sheer volume of complaints, 3 or 4 separate flashpoints in a single week, is difficult to dismiss as just one bad afternoon of television. It's a pattern that's building around the network's WNBA coverage, and it's become much bigger than one segment or one analyst.
Jordan get frozen out, 84-92, watched it. Anyone saying you can't make an argument for CC being a top 4 guard in the league is silly. Exactly.
So I want to
Dude is retarded as...
Even many of the people defending Dennis online couldn't fully support every comparison he made. Plenty of viewers pointed out that reaching back to a 40-year-old Olympic story to explain a punch to the throat that happened just 2 weeks ago feels like a stretch, even if they agree with his broader point that highly hyped rookies often become targets. That skepticism matters because it's the very same instinct that leads directly into the part of Dennis's segment that almost nobody is talking about.
Disrespect this young lady receive on a daily basis. We're talking daily basis. When it comes to the internet, when it comes to the perception of Caitlin Clark, there is nobody other than her fan base primarily that respects her on a level in which she should.
Comments like those are exactly why this story keeps generating so much attention before anyone even gets to the nuance. There's a real, well-documented gap between how fiercely Clark's fans defend her online and how little benefit of the doubt she often seems to receive from within the sport itself. That gap alone could easily be the focus of an entire video. But it also means the loudest reactions to any clip, from either side, usually show up before people have actually finished listening to everything being said.
When this play happened, she got up and ran back to the other side of the court because Caitlin Clark just wants to play basketball. She doesn't want congressional hearings about her being fouled. She doesn't want you to call in the National Guard when there is a foul on her. She wants to play basketball. She wants to deal with the physicality. She just wants it called.
If you go back and listen to the rest of what Dennis actually said, you'll notice the 11-second clip everyone is angry about only tells half the story. Right after that comment, he says Clark isn't out there demanding special treatment. She gets up, runs back on defense, and simply wants the physical play to be called correctly, nothing more. Then he makes the point that largely got buried. Dennis says Clark isn't a victim of her opponents at all. If she's a victim of anything, he argues, it's people using her in bad faith to go after the women defending her. Taken in full context, Dennis isn't defending anyone who's been overly physical with Clark. He's making almost the same point Clark made herself just last week, when she said the constant replaying of the Thomas incident and the culture war narrative built around it were doing her own league a disservice, and she asked everyone, in her own words, to be better. In the end, 2 people arrived at the same conclusion: stop using me as a weapon, yet ended up on completely opposite sides of the internet's outrage. Largely because one of them buried that message beneath a debate over a ballot number that most people outside basketball media didn't even understand.
I wholeheartedly believe that there needs to be some rules with the WNBA players because this is getting out of hand.
Facts.
Caitlin Clark voted 11th best guard by WNBA players. That's crazy. Kelsey Plum finished 12th in player rank, but she be percolating all over your defense. You be chasing her downhill.
That brings us to the person who spoke on this story hours before Dennis ever took his seat at the ESPN desk. Candace Parker didn't fire off a hot take from a random social media account. She made these comments on her own show, Post Moves, while sitting alongside Clark's Indiana teammate, Aaliyah Boston. And she didn't simply say the voting looked wrong. She started by looking at the numbers. Clark is averaging a career-high 21, 2 points and 8, 2 assists per game this season, ranking 4th and 2nd in the entire league in those categories, while shooting a career-best 43% from the field. Those aren't the kind of statistics that seem to support an 11th place finish among guards, and Parker knew that before she ever shared her opinion. She also applied the same standard to the Sparks' Kelsey Plum, who finished 12th in that same vote, noting that Plum is currently dealing with an injury, which is a reasonable explanation players might extend to a fellow teammate. That's the same kind of grace many people feel hasn't been extended to a healthy, active Caitlin Clark. It's also worth noting that Plum is still averaging nearly 24 points per game despite playing through injury, which suggests her 12th place finish may reflect missed games and the Sparks' reported ballot issues just as much as it reflects how her peers actually view her. Parker recognized that distinction instead of simply grouping every low ranking into the same category.
I wholeheartedly believe. I think people need to look at themselves in the mirror and realize, like, man, you got some insecurities if you sitting down and putting Caitlin Clark as the 11th best guard. Y'all need to go to a therapist and figure out what childhood issues you have. Because if you're sitting there and looking at yourself in the mirror and putting her as 11th best guard, and you're putting you as 8th best.
Parker isn't an outside voice speaking into a podcast microphone just to generate clicks. She's a 3-time champion who was recently inducted into the Hall of Fame herself. That means when she says this specific voting pattern doesn't add up, she's speaking from within the same locker room culture she's criticizing, not commenting from the outside in a television studio. That's why, when she tells the players who filled out those ballots to look in the mirror and deal with their own issues, it doesn't come across like an outsider chasing engagement. It sounds like a legend speaking directly to her peers, saying this particular pattern has stopped being just about basketball. And that leads to the central question this video opened with. Clark is an 11th because her fellow players secretly believe she isn't good enough. She's 11th because of 4-slot ballot, limited voter participation, at least one team that reportedly never even received its ballots, and a very real, very human resentment toward the league's most famous rookie all became wrapped into one number that created an easy headline. Parker is simply the one person with enough credibility inside that locker room to say the quiet part out loud without sounding like she's piling on. The timing also makes this story far more significant than a typical week of headlines. Clark still isn't back to full health. The Fever are battling to hold their place in a crowded Eastern Conference, and the All-Star Game in Chicago on July 25th is now carrying a completely different storyline than a normal midseason exhibition. Head coaches still have to select the 12 reserve spots behind these 10 starters, which means this same debate over how much the voting process should be trusted is about to unfold again in just a few weeks, only with a different group making the decisions. Whatever happens on the court this week has already answered the only question that truly mattered, and it was never really whether Caitlin Clark is a top 4 guard. It was whether the WNBA's own voting process can withstand the spotlight surrounding its biggest star without appearing broken in the process.
Watching the game tonight. This one should be very interesting. Caitlin Clark is not playing. Hopefully Aaliyah Boston plays. But I want to see if Stephanie White going to do this same rotation she did yesterday with 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, maybe 3 minutes. It's just going to be interesting to see how she does this lineup. And until next time, man, shake the haters off.
With Clark sitting out again tonight in Phoenix, Stephanie White has to adjust her rotation without the one player opposing defenses are built around. The same challenge she faced the last time Indiana took the floor. It'll be a matter of finding a few extra minutes here and there while hoping someone else rises to the occasion before the schedule gets even tougher. Watch how Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell respond to the added responsibility, because that will say a lot about whether the Fever can maintain their position without depending on Clark every single night, especially with a difficult stretch of games coming up after this back-to-back. So here's the question that really deserves the debate, not the one ESPN spent the week focusing on. Is the WNBA's All-Star voting process truly broken? Or is Candace Parker right that some of her fellow players simply can't be completely honest about Caitlin Clark? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because I'm genuinely interested to see where this fan base stands. If you enjoyed this breakdown and found it helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more coverage, and I'll see you in the next one.